Hello, everyone, and welcome to Slash Film Daily for Friday, July 12th, 2019. On today's episode, we're going to talk about the latest film and TV news. This is Slash Film Editor-in-Chief Peter Sciretta. And joining me on today's podcast is Slash Film Managing Editor Jacob Hall.
Hello, hello.
And Weekend Editor Brad Oman.
Hey, that's me.
And writer Chris Evangelista.
Hello, folks.
It's Friday once again. Happy times. We have a bunch of news to get to, so Water Cooler has been pushed back till Monday. Hopefully we'll get to it then. But let's first start with the Flintstones, which is getting a new animated series for adults. Brad, what do we know?
Yes, there's a new Flintstones adaptation that is in the works. Warner Brothers Animation wants to bring the Flintstones back. They've really been pushing to bring a lot of the Hanna-Barbera cartoons back in a different way. And this one will be working with Elizabeth Banks' production company to make it happen. Unfortunately, that's really all we know at this point. There's no network attached to it. And it's just apparently some kind of original idea to make a new primetime Flintstone series that will be geared towards adults. And the idea of gearing it towards adults isn't necessarily a new concept, because the original Flintstones was essentially geared towards adults. Back when it came out, it was a primetime animated network sitcom. It was intended to be kind of this spoof of the Honeymooners. I would imagine that in this case, the idea of making it for adults means it will be a little bit more edgy and probably not for kids. The classic Flintstones cartoon is tame enough due to the time it came out that it works pretty well for kids, especially since the ads for cigarettes that came out during the time are no longer attached to those episodes. Otherwise, there's no specifics about what the idea could be. The one idea that I thought of is that maybe a new approach to the Flintstones is taking that family and somehow bringing them to modern day. That seems kind of a departure of what the Flintstone is, but it could still be an interesting approach to kind of make it, I guess, a little refreshing. But I know Jacob has some thoughts on this.
Yeah, a couple years ago, DC Comics ran a 12-issue limited series as a reboot of the Flintstones, written by Mark Russell and illustrated by Steve Pugh. And it was deeply unusual, and many of the panels and pages were shared online and went viral, because out of context, they're incredibly strange. But even in context, they're strange. And it's a really fantastic comic book that uses the Flintstones iconography in ways that are very surprising and very adult-oriented, definitely not for children. And to me, it feels like the last word on the Flintstones. It feels like such a brutal inversion and dissection of the Flintstones as a concept that I don't know what is left to say with these characters. I mean, we're talking about a comic series where the brilliant gist of this comic is that the Flintstones are from the first generation of cave people to have civilization. They all grew up as traveling nomads, and their grandparents all don't like the idea of settling down. They're the first people to have homes and to have cities, and it's about adults trying to create civilization and the trying to grapple with the existential crisis of being a human being in a civilized world. And it is incredibly unsettling and funny and timely, and I don't know what else is even left to say after that. If the Flintstones was originally meant to be a parody of television at the time, that comic took it to be a satire on human angst in general. So I don't know what jokes are left. I don't know what references are left. I don't understand how you look at that comic and say, yeah, there's more to be done here in any way whatsoever.
But many people have not read this comic. Do you think this could be a translation of that comic in some way?
Oh, no. There's no way to make this comic. It is so specific and so strange and so dark. There's an issue. I know the Flintstones always had the joke about how, they have animals that are like, the washing machine is an animal, the vacuum machine is an animal. And there's an ongoing subplot about the two tools, which are baby dinosaurs, who live in the closet and strike up a friendship when they're not being used as tools. And it's tragic and heartbreaking and really upsetting, and there's no way it gets made, and there's no way anybody has the nerve to take a Flintstones comic series and start being an official Flintstones product endorsed by Hanna-Barbera. It is a eviscerating takedown on the Flintstones. There's nothing left here. Peter, is there anything left here? They're vitamins, they're mascots, and I don't think you can have people take them seriously or take them as jokes anymore beyond being either, a mascot on a shelf or being like a really profound comic book satire.
I really don't know. I don't know what the take is here. I do know that I grew up watching the Flintstones and the Jetsons, and I enjoyed them a lot. And I feel like there's nothing really on TV like that. Or maybe I don't watch enough animated stuff. Like, I know everybody says The Simpsons, but I think the Flintstones had a quality to them that the Simpsons don't. I don't know.
I suppose there's always a chance that maybe they could like shift the roles a bit with the family, where like Fred isn't the one going off to work and Wilma is, 'cause especially with someone like Elizabeth Banks on board as a producer.
Chris, do you have any thoughts on this? Like, is there any way to do the Flintstones for adults nowadays?
I don't know. They could like the Flintstones just like
Making that bedrock.
Yeah, exactly.
I don't think that's going to happen, but I don't know.
All right. You never know.
Stranger things have happened. Speaking of which, they're making a Varsity Blues TV series, I guess, but it's for this new Quibi network. Chris, what do we know?
Is it Kwibi or is it Kwibi? I say Kwibi.
Quibi? Quibi?
I'm gonna go with Kwibi because it sounds stupider, and I like to say the worst thing possible. So
I think it's Quibi because it's supposed to be short for quick bite, and that feels
Okay.
like
Okay. Quibi.
So Kwibi, which is a short form content streaming service that's coming out next year, where instead of traditional 30-minute or hour-long shows, the shows are going to be broken up into sort of 10-minute blocks. The idea is this is supposed to appeal to people don't have time to sit down and watch a full show, and people who watch things on their phone, stuff like that. So if that appeals to you, you might want to check out Quibi. And they're going to have a Varsity Blues show on there, which is based on the 1999 football drama about high school football players. James Vanderbeek was in it. Paul Walker was in it. The Foo Fighters music was in it. It was a big thing in 1999. The commercials were on all the time for it. And they're turning it into a show. I don't really know how. I guess they're going to do it like they did Friday Night Lights, which is sort of like the same idea, I guess. So I guess they're going to go for that. And yeah.
But what is the purpose of a Varsity Blues TV show nowadays in a world that we have had Friday Night Lights? I feel like that has captured that world in a better way.
Yeah, but Peter, this is shorter, so it's going to be in quick bites. So,
But Chris, what if I don't want your quick bite TV show?
Oh boy.
But also Doug Liman's involved. We can't write that off completely, right?
Well, he's not doing he's doing a completely different show.
That's a different show.
Yes, Doug Liman is doing a show called Crazy Talented, and the basic premise is it's people in a mental asylum who might be superheroes, which is also the same exact plot as Glass. So I don't really know how that's going to turn out.
Yeah, I'm not sure.
Quibi.
I'm really wondering if we're going to subscribe to this. I mean, you run a streaming column or streaming columns for Slash Film. Are you going to subscribe to Quibi?
Oh, no, probably not. I can't see that happening.
But think about it, Chris. You don't have to invest an hour of your time. You just got to invest what is it, just a few minutes.
Plus, isn't Spielberg doing something for Quibi?
My plan is whenever the Spielberg thing is available, I will email Quibi and say, please give me a screener of this. That's my plan for the Spielberg Quibi.
Okay, let's move on to Marvel rumors. Comic-Con is gearing up next week in San Diego, and a lot of people have been speculating on what kind of announcements they're going to have, including some casting rumors for the Eternals. Brad, what do we know?
Yes, people can't wait until Comic-Con happens next week to find out all of the news that Marvel Studios has plans. And there have been some rumors circulating for not even just this week, but just kind of over in recent months about certain cast members joining the movie The Eternals, which will help expand the cosmic side of the Marvel Cinematic Universe. There's been reports from trades. There's been rumors that have popped up online elsewhere from less reputable outlets. Two of the biggest ones have been rumors that Millie Bobby Brown and reports that Kumail Nanjiani will have roles in the Eternals. With Millie Bobby Brown, this rumor has been kicked around for a while, but it only recently became reinvigorated because Variety did this whole spread on maybe what to expect and what might happen at Marvel's Comic-Con panel. And all of a sudden, people started running with that, like, "Oh, Millie Bobby Brown's going to be in the Eternals," and it got so big that she felt that she had to address on her Instagram in a live video that it wasn't something that she and her family knew about. So if that's happening, then it's like a last-minute deal that Marvel's going to try to do. But it sounds like, unless she's very good at lying and keeping a secret, that Millie Bobby Brown probably won't be in the Eternals. Kumail Nanjiani, on the other hand, that was a report that came from the trades, and he was recently asked by Variety as well about his potential involvement, and he did the standard, "I can't really comment on that, but of course I would be excited to be in a superhero movie." What gives us a little bit more evidence that Kumail probably is going to be in the Eternals is there was a recent Men's Health profile about him, and he's been working out and working with a personal trainer because he realized that the one thing that was keeping him from getting bigger leading man roles and like doing more action stuff was the fact that he was not, in super great physical shape. Not that he was out of shape necessarily, but he's not toned and he doesn't have a lot of muscle to work with. So it sounds like he's probably doing the same kind of thing Chris Pratt did to get in shape for Guardians of the Galaxy. And then Kevin Feige was asked about these two, and he also just said these are great actors. Nothing to confirm right now. And the additional name that he was asked about was Donnie Yen, who has also been rumored for this movie, but the same kind of thing where they're just not ready to announce anything yet. And really, basically, we just have to wait until Comic-Con to find out what they're going to tell us.
I think Millie Bobby Brown is a liar. I think she's going to be on stage at Comic-Con. No, I'll be honest with you.
We'll see. I'm really curious what they're going to show us at Comic-Con. And I think I finally realized, Brad, that the only thing that's keeping me away from being in a Marvel Cinematic Universe film is I'm not working out. So maybe I should start doing that. Dead silence. Okay, let's move on to Mortal Kombat. They once did a Mortal Kombat movie. I think some people consider it to be the best video game movie of all time. I'm not sure if that's true or not.
No way. No way.
Some people consider it to be their favorite. Like if you go
better than most of them.
If you look at lists on the internet, it is up there. That, Resident Evil, and I think like maybe Tomb Raider, I think are the top three.
Detective Pikachu, I think, is dethroned them all. Even that's not a great movie.
Yeah. Well, looks like they're going to make another Mortal Kombat movie, and this one's going to be rated R. Jacob, what do we know?
Yeah, we've known about this Mortal Kombat reboot for some time. James Wan of The Conjuring and Aquaman fame is producing, and commercial director Simon McCoy is making his directorial feature debut with it. And it's still a little ways away. I think we're expecting a 2021 release date. But screenwriter Greg Russo tweeted, "Since it's already been stated by other members of the team, I'm going to put this one to bed. Mortal Kombat will be R-rated, and for the first time ever, fatalities will finally be on the big screen. You have to wait for the movie and see." So, for those of you who don't speak video game, fatality refers to, in Mortal Kombat, it's a fighting game where two players face off, pummeling each other to bits. And once you defeat the other player, you can enter a series of button presses to perform fatality, which is an incredibly gruesome, bloody, spines being ripped out, heads being knocked off, people being skinned alive. Just a brutal way to kill your enemy. It's what made Mortal Kombat famous. It's put on the map. And the PG-13 Mortal Kombat and its PG-13 sequel, Mortal Kombat Annihilation, are very much children's movies, whereas the whole appeal of Mortal Kombat in the 90s when it first came out is that it felt transgressive. It was something that kids could play. It was so gruesome and hardcore and over the top that Congress literally used it as a whipping boy for the video game industry. It was played like literally in front of congressmen to try to explain why video games needed a rating system. So we've come full circle here. The video game series, known for its violence, is finally getting the violent adaptation that arguably it deserves. I mean, it's not Mortal Kombat unless you're being as edgy and as violent as humanly possible.
I'm wondering, is this a problem with video game movies that, Hollywood wants the IP. They want the fans that are excited about these properties to come over and buy tickets. but they end up like adapting these things into things that don't closely resemble the original product. And, I think we had that problem with comic book movies in the earlier days, and video game movies. Like, you're getting stuff that doesn't quite capture what the video game is. Like, are we finally getting around to the age that Hollywood is getting it? Like, the reason why people liked Mortal Kombat was the fatalities and stuff?
I hope so. I mean, well, for me, Mortal Kombat is the appeal of it is that it's incredibly violent, takes stuff incredibly seriously, but it's also incredibly stupid and knowingly so. And it's such a bizarre combination, and something that I really hope they can pull off. I'm not so sure the exact approach this reboot is taking, but if they can capture, like, the most recent games especially have really leaned heavily on story and character in a way that no one expected, and a way that are actually pretty satisfying. So I think there's actually a really good movie to be mined here. You take the Enter the Dragon format of fighters from around the world entering a tournament, some fighters from alternate dimensions. There's a big fantasy twist, and you play it all straight faced, but knowingly, be knowingly aware that it's all very, very silly. I think they need to capture that balance, which is tough, and I am curious to see if they can pull it off here. But you know what? I hope they do.
You know what they need? They need Zack Snyder, because I feel like he could unknowingly pull that off. Like, he wouldn't think that he was making a silly movie. He'd be pulling it, trying to make it seriously. And I feel like the result could be exactly what you described, Jacob.
Oh man, I have no idea. Zack Snyder, you're right. I don't think Zack Snyder has a sense of humor whatsoever, but I think he has an accidental one. So, yeah, you know what? Bring it on. You know what? And also, I hope this filmmaker, McCoy, you know what? David Fincher made commercials before he directed. So, you know what, Mr. McCoy, I'm ready for you to impress me.
Yeah, there's a lot of filmmakers that started out in commercials, like Ridley Scott, even Dan Trachtenberg, who is making the Uncharted movie. So there you go. Let's move on to Paper Girls. This is a comic book series from Brian K. Vaughan. It's very popular in the age of Stranger Things, and now it is getting a TV series from Amazon. Chris, what do we know?
Yes, Paper Girls. It's set in the 80s. It's got kids on bikes. So even though the comic series predates Stranger Things, I am almost positive Amazon, who now have the rights to a Paper Girls series, sat around and said, we need our own Stranger Things. What can we get? And they went for this. Sort of similar to how they sat around saying, we need our own Game of Thrones. What can we get? And then they spent millions and millions of dollars on Lord of the Rings. So I haven't read Paper Girls because I have this weird thing with comics where I don't read them until their run is finished. I don't know why. It's just like an OCD thing where I don't want to read it if it's ongoing. I think
the run is coming to an end, though.
Yeah, well, 2 more issues. You're almost there, Chris.
All right. Well, yeah. When it comes to an end, I will finally read it. But I just don't like starting reading something if it's not finished. I just have a thing about that. But everything I've heard about it has been really good and really positive. And even though it's set in the 80s, it's not like nostalgic for the 80s like Stranger Things is. It's more about showing that the 80s weren't as good as people seem to pretend they were. So everything I heard about it is really cool, and it'll probably make a good TV show if the right people are involved. Stephanie Folsom, who co-wrote Toy Story 4, is writing the script. So I don't know if she's the right person for this or not, but I guess we'll see.
I know when Stranger Things came out, a lot of people that were not a fan of that first season were like, if you didn't like Stranger Things, you should read Paper Girls. And I read the first volume of this, and it is great. Is it a spoiler, Jacob, to say that this involves time travel, or is that part of the premise?
I'd say it's part of the premise, but I wouldn't say how time travel is involved.
Yeah, but you are a big fan of this series, right?
Oh, it's phenomenal. I'm all caught up. I'm on the edge of my seat for the final few issues. I like the first season Stranger Things. I'm not caught up. But Paper Girls is everything I want Stranger Things to be. It's nostalgic in the right ways. It's critical in the right ways. It uses its 80s setting to critique the past, the future, and the present. The sci-fi concepts are wild. All 4 lead characters, these paper delivery girls in the 80s, are instantly like wonderful, and their dynamic makes sense. And if they can pull this off, if they can capture the comic, this could be like the next big thing. I'm so excited about this.
I love everything that Brian K. Vaughan writes. So, I mean, if you have not gotten into comics and you're putting off because you don't like the tights, like, I feel like he's a great entry point into that kind of stuff. Like, Saga is so weird. If you like sci-fi but you want more weird, if you like Star Wars but you want more weird, I suggest Saga. I love, Why the Last Man, which Hollywood's been trying to turn into a movie or TV series for the last, 6-7 years now. And Paper Girls is fantastic. What else would you recommend from Brian K. Vaughan?
Ex Machina is a series about a alternate history where a superhero prevents the second tower coming down on 9/11 and gets elected mayor of New York City based on his celebrity after that. And it's a political series where a guy with superpowers tries to keep New York City, its head above water post 9/11. And it is maybe one of the best pieces of art I've ever seen to deal with the aftermath of September 11th attacks. It is.
Is that finished? Because I immediately want to read that. Just hearing it.
It is finished. It's done. It's available and widely. It's wonderful.
All right, I'm going to get that now.
There's also, I remember reading a book from his, but it was more like artsy and poetic. It was called like Pride of Baghdad. Is that right?
Yeah, Pride of Baghdad's real good.
Yeah, and that was about, I think it was based on a true story where this lion escaped on the streets of Baghdad, and like he basically imagines the story of that lion. Is that right? Because I think I read this like over a decade ago.
Yeah, it's set during the American invasion of Iraq, and the Baghdad Zoo is hit, and abandoned, and it follows a family of lions as they escape from the zoo and wander around a bombed out city trying to survive, and it's heartbreaking.
Yeah, it's really good. It's not one of those things that I think could be turned into a movie or TV series. It's perfect as it is. That was a comic, but I would highly recommend that as well. Okay, our last bit of news. The Mandalorian. Is it going to get a second season, Brad?
Apparently, Disney thinks it will, or is hoping it will. Jon Favreau is making the publicity rounds because he directed The Lion King, and it comes to theaters next week. And while he appeared on Jimmy Kimmel Live this week, there was a brief discussion about The Mandalorian, which Jon Favreau executive produces and also wrote. And even though the first season doesn't come out until November, when Disney Plus makes its debut as a new subscription streaming service, apparently he's already working on a second season. He said that he's writing it right now. And that does give some hope that Disney is confident in the series. The reaction was great from Star Wars Celebration earlier this year, where we saw the first footage from it. But at the same time, this could easily just be, planning ahead, just in case it is. I would imagine Disney's probably still waiting to see how audiences react to the first season of The Mandalorian before they really officially give it the green light. But they probably still want to know what Jon Favreau has, in store for the story as it would continue beyond the first season.
Yeah. I was going to say, what we do know is that D23 next month, we're going to get another preview of this. We're going to get some previews on the show floor as well as in the presentations there at D23. I will be there, so I will have coverage of that then.
Cool. Yeah, so we'll be finding out a lot of new stuff about The Mandalorian soon. Hopefully there'll be an official trailer release so that everyone who wasn't at Star Wars Celebration can get a look at it.
Yeah, you saw all that stuff, and I know you talked about it for the podcast, but you were really amped up after seeing that footage, right?
Yeah, I was super impressed by the footage. It felt like original trilogy Star Wars kind of stuff. It had style to it. All the cast was fantastic in the footage that they showed. And so, yeah, I'm excited to see what they do with this series.
Well, I hope we get some more information as Jon Favreau makes the publicity rounds for The Lion King. But that brings us then for this week. You can find more of all of our stories in today's show notes. You can find Slash Film Daily published every weekday on iTunes, Google, Overcast, Spotify, all the popular podcast apps. Please feel free to send your feedback, questions, comments, concerns to us at peter@slashfilm.com. And please head on over to our iTunes page, give us a rating, give us a review, tell your friends, spread the word, and we'll see you on Monday.